Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Param Efficacy. I'm a co-founder and senior fellow here at the Institute for Critical Infrastructure Technology, and want to welcome everyone to ICIT's Cyber E-Talk entitled Tools to Prevent Nation-State and Cyber Criminals from Infiltrating Your Network. As you know, ICIT is a research-driven organization, so we look at what the community is asking for and what we feel is important to advance cybersecurity and usher in the cyber renaissance that we know is desperately needed to protect our critical infrastructures and improve national security. We've noticed through briefings and through discussions that, as is probably no news to anybody, we're spending far too many resources on detect and response versus prevention. And we really need to flip this paradigm. And so we reached out to some of our partners and identified MasterCard and Blue Vector as being two organizations that we work with who have a tremendous amount of experience, focus, and knowledge in this area, and we asked them to contribute and participate in today's conversation. Blue Vector will be talking about some of its experiences in pervasive visibility and segmentation, eliminating data silos and centralized data collection and interoperability. And MasterCard will be sharing some work it's doing with respect to increasing and enabling automation and orchestration and intel decision support. Just some really quick housekeeping items. If you look at your screen in the upper right corner, you have some links to some resources that are available to you from ICIT and our other partners. We have a Q&A option available if you want to ask questions. We will answer questions at the end of the talk. We shouldn't be here for more than 30-35 minutes, so we encourage you to stick around through the end, as well as chime in with any questions you have. Our speakers will either direct email you the answers or they will address them verbally to the entire group towards the end. And obviously, the main part of your screen is the slides that we'll be going towards, and you can maximize that to get a better view. With that, I want to go ahead and formally introduce our speakers. First up, we have Dr. John Brickey, who is an ICIT Fellow and a Senior Vice President and Cybersecurity Evangelist at MasterCard. Following Dr. Brickey will be Nate Carroll, an ICIT contributor and a security architect from Blue Vector's Threat Intelligence Research. And so with that, John, I'm going to hand it off to you and you can get things started.
Okay, thanks, Parm. Well, good afternoon, at least afternoon for most of you. My name is John Brickey. I'm gonna first, I'm going to tell you about my roles at MasterCard first and foremost, which kind of makes sense as I go through the presentation. I have three main roles. One is a cybersecurity strategist. The second is a scout for emerging capabilities. And then the third is what I'm doing today as an evangelist for MasterCard cybersecurity. And what many of you probably don't realize is that MasterCard is a technology company. We just happen to be in a financial services space. And so as such, we're on the front lines of a modern cyber assault against our critical infrastructure. And this becomes a serious concern in this more open and interconnected business environment, especially in the midst of unprecedented threats. However, the need to resolve this concern presents a clear opportunity for MasterCard. And so I'm going to just tell you the agenda is just these three areas. First, I'll talk about our strategic pillars and imperatives. I'll discuss some of our initiatives with prevention, as well as a little bit about response. Because let's face it, we can prevent all day, but we're always going to have to be prepared to respond. Okay, so this just shows three of our pillars going from left to right: resilience, culture, and innovation, and then the three imperatives that go across all of the strategic pillars. So in resilience, we're focused on increasing visibility across all of our environments, minimizing attack services, controlling access, and then, of course, responding when necessary. As far as culture, we want to, like everyone else, we want to improve awareness as well as train and educate our force. And we want to improve our overall culture of excellence to increase our confidence in our security professionals and instill a sense of pride in preventing attacks. And I think that says a lot. I think people in the cybersecurity field are down a bit because it's constant. So we really want to instill that sense of pride so that they see themselves as being proactive. And then finally, innovation. which can come in many different forms, whether it's creating a new service, a new system, a process, or even enhancing existing ones. And so I'll talk about some things, some partnerships that we're working on in the next couple slides. But across all these three pillars, there are three primary imperatives for us, and that is integrating. So whether it's people or tools, getting people and tools to talk together, to talk to each other. Automating. So when we believe it's the right thing to automate, actually removing people from decisions and actions. And it's not always appropriate to do that, but when it is, we want to do that as much as possible. And then we want to mature. So we want to increase our operational excellence. So as a technology company in the payment sector, we have a lot of compliance that we have to constantly mature. So these are the main opportunities and really the bulk of what I'll talk about. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we see the challenges in securing our people, devices, and data as opportunities to differentiate ourselves even more in the future. So these are some of the areas where we're at different stages of development or operations for enabling prevention and prediction tools and processes. So these are not all things that we've done and we're mature with. So I just want to make sure that that's clear in advance. So the first one, threat intelligence. So like many others, we're monitoring threats wherever we can. So if it's on the dark web or through other tools or through specific tools and threat feeds that everyone gets, we're doing that to better see our networks, our devices, our transactions, our users. And we're consuming and making sense of APT and other cyber threat intelligence and indicators to make decisions on defending our enterprise and on defending our customers, because we do a lot of that that I didn't realize when I came to MasterCard. So another little caveat I didn't say up front, I've been at MasterCard for 5 months now. Before that, I spent 26 years in the defense sector. Identity and access management is a major area. Again, when I started working there 5 months ago, I've heard identity and access management in almost every major meeting I've been in. If we can prevent, we can prevent many attacks if we can just restrict or limit access. And we're leveraging some new technologies, specifically in artificial intelligence capability via New Data. That's a company that MasterCard acquired this year. And just one of the capabilities, for example, is based on how you're walking, based on your gait, New Data can detect whether or not it's actually you. So those kinds of capabilities are what we're looking to leverage in the future. And vulnerability management. What we are looking for is auto bug identification and patching. And you may have seen, if you were familiar with the DARPA Grand Challenge, the first machine-to-machine competition a couple years ago. That's the kind of innovation and the type of technology or capabilities that we're looking for. And actually, that company spun off. That team spun off its own company. So, we talk to companies all the time about these new capabilities. That's the kind of thing we're excited about. And even regular bug bounties. So we've done bug bounties in the past. Matter of fact, we just opened up one internally to MasterCard. We give our folks a chance to earn some money and prizes, and then we open it up to the public, a vetted public. Deception. If you can make your adversary expend enough resources, they'll likely move on to somebody else. Now, that's not necessarily a good thing for leveling the water, but we're interested in making it difficult for our adversaries to the point that they move on. Now, that's not depending on your organization. That you may have a very persistent adversary, and depending on what they're looking for, that may be a difficult task. But in general, I think that's should be a part of a strategy. And then active defense. This is more conceptual, but trying to look as far left of the crown jewels as possible. So how can you remove malware? How can you detect threats before they even get inside your perimeters? So those are some of the primary areas where we're looking at these capabilities. And I just want to talk for a minute about some how we're really leveraging partnerships for some of these areas. So for example, for innovation, we know that we don't have all the good ideas. So we're leveraging venture capital firms and startups to widen our net and to build partnerships with expertise really around the world. For example, I know I'm going to Israel to talk to a bunch of companies next month. And I just got back from San Francisco talking to companies out there, and we're part of our tech hub is in the St. Louis area, so we work with a partner VC in that area as well. And we're trying to identify emerging capabilities and proactively identify solutions to close potential gaps in our tool sets. Where we want to be is we don't want to be in the business of responding to vendors on a daily basis. We want to have our strategy to identify those gaps and go out and look for the right partnerships. The next initiative is really on predicting attacks, and that's we're partnering with academia and government partners to provide data sets. So using our data to help them improve algorithms and detect cyber attacks. We're also working on a pilot called the IACD Integrated Adaptive Cyber Defense Pilot, and that's developed by NSA and DHS. We're working through Johns Hopkins University on that, and we're one of several financial service companies that are participating in that pilot program. And then threat casting, the last initiative here. So we seek a better understanding of the future and ways we can be more proactive in thwarting cyber attacks. So we're working. There's an initiative going on that everyone can join, and you go out and look up ASU, Arizona State University Threat Casting Lab, and we're working with them on more on doing things with our customers internally, but we also are working with them in their nationwide efforts, and there are some reports out there. I recommend you go look for those. So what we're doing there is we're working with them to provide actionable models to not only comprehend possible threats 10 years into the future, but also as a means to identify, track, disrupt, mitigate, and then recover from them as well. Okay, so off of prevention and prediction, for again, for reality's sake, there's no silver bullet, and we have to accept that attacks will get through and that we'll have to respond at some point. So we've increased our capabilities as everyone else has, and these are just some examples, whether it be physical access, systems that integrate physical and cyber access, identity access management, auditing management, insider threat programs, really many of the things that you would expect for a large corporation, especially one that's protecting financial transactions to have as part of their tool set. And one of I guess one of the latest capabilities we've integrated is a fusion center. So we established this several months ago, and it enables integration of intelligence findings with other relevant teams, increases speed to resolution, and promotes comprehensive response. Now, I think it's also useful for prevention as well, if you catch things far enough to the left of breach. So using your threat intel teams, I think this can be a critical part of your prevention strategy. So if you're familiar with the OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, and act, this is a very similar concept. And in our Fusion Center, we have team members that represent functions across the entire enterprise. So whether that's intelligence, crisis management, could be our fraud team, it could be our customer support team, legal, vulnerability management, forensics, and even the SOC. It's side by side with our SOC, and we're moving towards a follow the sun concept for this. So we have one Fusion Center already in place. We have multiple SOCs, and we have Fusion Centers that are being built as we speak. Okay, so that concludes my portion. I'm going to go look through questions. If you had some, you typed them in there. I see that there's something in there. Then I'll respond to those either individually, or I will answer them for everyone at the end. And so I'll turn it back over to Param, or go directly to Nate.
That sounds great. Thank you, John. Yeah, anyone has any questions, please go ahead and submit them. We saw a couple come in, which is great. And Nate, I'll go ahead and hand it off to you to keep things going.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Nate Carroll. I'm a security architect at Blue Vector. I'll be adding some commentary surrounding the three imperatives John spoke on earlier. These were gained from my time as a consultant in the private sector, as well as on the front lines within the intelligence community, so hopefully it will be applicable to the wide range of attendees in the audience today. First, I'd like to say understanding where you are and where you want to be, coupled with the regulatory or security framework guidance, is really a good step forward in selecting a solution. Here are some of the typical annual report statistics we see. I'd like to call out two of the stats and ask, does your security team know how much malware they receive as commodity versus targeted? What is the average analyst workload? And what is the criteria for escalating an alert to an incident? With the sheer amount of alerts that we receive, are we just assuming that the network or host-based security technology actually prevented the unwanted activity, or are we confirming that? And it's critical to understand your level of maturity and take stock of what you own. Having a grasp of even the basics of these metrics, and some good ones that I like to fall back to is, time to detect, time to triage, response to remediation. These allow you to gauge your security team's efficiencies, identify obstacles in processes or systems, and find areas of improvement for your teams. Understanding where your current level of maturity is, and that sometimes requires an unbiased view or assessment, but it's quite imperative to come to an executive agreement as to what the final state will be, as this level setting will facilitate your the maturing as well as your planning for any type of capabilities moving forward. But really, you can't stop what you can't see, and this is where network analytics and machine learning can play the most dividends with regards to prevention. Of course, network analytics have the same limitation as they must be omnipresent to really yield maximum benefits, and we'll deal into that in the next slide. Depending upon your footprint, segmentation can take many forms. Traditionally, organizations break them down into perimeter, data center, your cloud presence, and what has now become kind of termed IoT. Despite the nomenclature, the goal is to identify data checkpoints between zones, which affords you visibility into the traffic that traverses across your logical divisions. Additionally, it's just as important to have a monitoring solution with enough configuration alternatives to support deployments in each of these locales, redundant platforms at the perimeter, and virtual scalable instances in the data center, as well as an instance in each of your cloud providers. So just looking at kind of the basis of where we're at, what are some of the considerations per zone? For example, the perimeter, inbound and outbound monitoring. Do we need to take into consideration TLS decryption? Personally, as a malware guy, I like to be able to extract from the traffic any binary content or firmware that enters or leaves any network segment. Going deeper inside the organization, the data center, we kind of that traditional enterprise to data center connection, that network throughput is growing. Will you actually need to handle 40 or 100 gigabit networks? Will you require a traffic aggregator to filter out unwanted traffic, such as backup traffic? Sometimes by doing this, you're actually able to take a smaller size solution to accommodate larger networks. We can even deep dive into virtual to virtual segmentation, even micro segmentation at the app level. Also, we must keep into consideration that we have to have redundancy at each one of these sites. So when we go into our planning of solution, selecting a solution, we have to make sure that we kind of figure in that cost. From a cloud perspective, we want to choose a detection platform that can consolidate reporting from both our physical network as well as our cloud presence. This really ensures a single view into our business and allows us internally to communicate better, both from a detection and prevention perspective. As with the traditional perimeter, ensuring your cloud-based security solution is also able to integrate with existing cloud-based visibility platforms. Sometimes this requires a third party. Then we dive down into the IoT, the Internet of Things, which really constitutes everything from mobility, smart devices, even control systems. Understanding your organization's logical traffic flows is imperative to stop highly skilled adversaries. For example, IoT devices love to talk to the cloud, except it's probably not your cloud. How does this traffic leave your organization, and can it be monitored? For example, which MTD servers are they configured to point to? What telemetry is being uploaded, and is it encrypted? To whom is it being sent? And do you have metadata on this communication to identify those outliers? The ability to monitor wireless protocols is gaining more and more importance, and not just 802.11, but Bluetooth, D-Wave, and Zigbee. I've even personally used FM radio and power line carrier to exfil data during penetration tests, so we need to start thinking full spectrum. Throughput and licensing models add up. So to reiterate the last slide, make sure the technology can talk to your other solutions, meaning it can take action upon a set of conditions and can consolidate its findings into a single view. That view, of course, is going to be dependent upon your SOC's workflow. And if they prefer to be SIM or analytics driven, or have a dedicated analyst on the platform. Eliminating data silos. Every device and employee is a potential sensor for spotting evil. Configure a centralized repository for all your logs, threat data, and forensic artifacts. Depending on your organization's size, this could be Splunk, ELK, or into a Hadoop stack. Sizing and planning are key, as some storage solutions charge by the amount of data it processes. So be sure to ask your IT teams for not just the amount, but also the type of data they process. This ranges from syslog, netflow, Active Directory logs, host-OS forensic timelines, and most importantly, identity or IAM logs. We also need to demand interoperability. Too often, we gravitate towards the next shiny technology that will solve all of our problems. Lately, it has become more and more post-breach. Our goal is to increase threat detection pre-breach while decreasing staff requirements, either in personnel taskings or enabling more junior folks to take the work once handled by experienced employees. This includes automation of workflow via native integrations with your existing stack, whether security, host, or network. Application programming interfaces, or APIs, are now bridging the gap between security to network and from perimeter to endpoint. Your solutions should offer robust, documented APIs with existing integrations with major technology providers that present relatively endless possibilities for allowing or denying bad actor access anywhere within your domain. For those getting their feet wet in network programmability, automation platforms exist with technology vendors providing playbooks to assist in the creation of conditions for response, as well as for the response itself. I also like to ask, is this an open platform? Does the solution give me full access to all the data inside it and allow me to build more functionality into the solution itself? For example, does Product X allow you to run your own Docker container within it? This might be a virtual workspace to perform preliminary analysis on the malware, or when it receives an alert, trigger a certain workflow based upon the conditions of that alert. Threat data comes in various formats and is quite abundant today, so it's important to opt for a solution that can ingest, at a minimum, the industry standards. Now, there's about a 70-30 split, with most teams opting for STIX TAXII over OpenIOC, but we also have things such as snort-style network signatures, YAR rules, and fuzzy hashing. All of these data points can help you sort out the known bad or commodity malware. Format aside, I highly recommend that you choose threat data formats or signature sets that you can redistribute internally, meaning to your other regions, specifying all the way down to the technologies itself, as well as to your industry partners or, for example, an ISAC. Internally, all these signature-based or file-based lookups should be done on a single platform or a centralized manager, thus reducing multiple instances or the maintenance on multiple systems. In fact, if your solution, whether commercial or open source, cannot query other data sources, you may want to start looking elsewhere. The goal is really to identify the known bad so you can focus on the unknown. And that's really where we kind of get into the rise of machine learning. Now, there are two forms of thought here. Not being a data scientist, I'll keep it fairly simplistic, but unsupervised machine learning tries to group or cluster samples together to identify outliers or anomalies. If any of our guests today attended BroCon this year, they saw an increase in focus given to machine learning with regards to packets. If this is of interest, you don't even need a big Hadoop cluster to start testing. Bro Platform's metadata can be enriched by data mining and analysis tools such as scikit-learn, and there are a few notebooks published to get you started as well. Supervised learning uses training samples that have labels to determine its classification. This involves two distinct sets of data, one for training and another batch for testing. The learning algorithm kind of builds the model, which is the output that summarizes the training samples. So from there, we kind of decide which attributes, and these are often called features, which attributes we're going to use, and then that can really kind of be dependent upon what you're looking to identify. For example, with the identification of malware, using supervised learning, we can look at the individual byte patterns, the file header of whatever type of file it is, for example, a portable executable, or the structure of the file, for example, a PDF file. We would ask ourselves, for example, is the file's PE header non-standard? Does it match known bad, known good, or even more curiously, lack the characteristics of a good file? If we take that executable and dice it up, we can see that individual sections or embedded artifacts can be flagged upon. For example, an executable was packed with chlamydia to hinder reverse engineering, or perhaps there are known bad IP addresses embedded within that file. Now that's nothing more than pattern-based matches, whereas when we look at the individual byte patterns or the structure of those of the files itself, we can really start to identify the anomalies. The ability to test against your own artifact library, though, really improves the efficacy in regards to the detection of targeted attacks while reducing those false positives. And I'll kind of show you from our internal testing, regression testing, what that looks like. I'd say on average, our supervised learning classifier regression test places us about detecting malware 13 months ahead of initial reporting. It's kind of, I would say it becomes trivial to conceal malware from being identified as bad because there's a lot of programs and things out there that you can do to manipulate a file to hide its maliciousness. But using machine learning, it's quite difficult to make malware appear as true, benign, or good software. File detection aside, the recent release of our speculative code execution engine, that's built for detecting fileless malware at the perimeter and allows us to spot malware in the script form. So you can kind of see how we're identifying, using supervised machine learning, identifying threats earlier, but what does that mean to the customer themselves? Well, the capabilities I described today can be found in a single blue vector. The customers that we have, they test about an 80% increase in efficiency or a 5-to-1 FTE savings. That's significant, as with the tools and capabilities we discussed, empower junior analysts while freeing up your senior folks to tackle larger issues. I can personally attest to the efficiency savings, as I was supporting a fairly large conference out in Denver a couple of weeks ago, and having these capabilities on a single platform, leveraging automation and things of that nature, allowed me to go through about 18 hours alerts in 6 minutes. That gave me a lot of time to not worry about commodity malware, but really focus on threat hunting. On average, our customers are also seeing, using machine learning, seeing about 2 new malware variants or targeted threats each day. And this reduces the amount of time from detection to mitigation for destructive malware as well. And to be clear, that's communicating through APIs, network to host, as we discussed earlier. So thank you for having Blue Vector and myself on today. If you want more information on how to identify threats pre-breach or see more details on how supervised machine learning spots threats months and sometimes years before they're publicized, please check out our blog at bluevector.io. And I'll turn it back over to you guys.
Excellent. Nate, thank you very much. Well, that brings us to a close of our today's Cyber E-Talk. We appreciate all the attendees. We had some great questions come in that I know have pretty much been answered. One that we did want to go ahead and answer verbally, which we think would be a nice way to to close out today's discussion is to have Nate and John, if you could share your experiences with respect to the following. We all know that resources are limited when it comes to cyber, and practitioners need to build very effective and impactful use cases to essentially garner buy-in from executives. We know this is one of the biggest challenges everybody faces. What recommendations do you have? How have you, either within your organizations or in seeing other organizations and individuals that you work with who are successful in getting buy-in from leadership, what do you recommend that our audience members do, and how to approach getting buy-in to invest in some of these more advanced prevention type technologies? If Nate or John, either of you want to take that.
Yeah, this is John. I'll just take just an additional stab at it. So first I would say, if the capability solves our problems, the harder the problem, the better off you are here. Fills gaps in the strategy and aligns overall with our strategy. I think at the advanced level, if you can tie it to risk metrics and ROI, then you're even better off.
Excellent. Nate, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, kind of going back to that first slide, be able to introduce new technology into an organization, really being able to have those metrics, like John was talking about, but trying to essentially determine how much time it's going to save a particular, with regards to workflow, how it can empower the analysts, whether that is getting your more senior guys to focus on the harder problems while offloading some of the solutions or some of the issues to more junior folks, leveraging either solution that innovation, automation, etc. Having that understanding, as well as understanding where your current level of maturity is and how that system will help you get to that next level, having that essentially that executive buy-in will definitely help in those discussions.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, that brings us to a close. Once again, I want to thank Blue Vector for underwriting today's Cyber E-Talk. Without the support of our partners, the Institute cannot do its job, so we want to thank them. John, thank you to MasterCard and yourself for your involvement, and we look forward to engaging all of the attendees at the next ICIT Cyber E-Talk. Everyone have a fantastic day.